Har Har Mahadev. With Maha Shivaratri approaching, let's hear a story about one of Shiva's 12 Jyotirlings. In this story, Arjuna the Pandav has just set out toward one of the highest peaks of the Himalayas, Indrakil mountain. As he walks with his bow in hand, he remembers the sage Vedavyasa's words. Vedavyas had come to visit them in the forest, and he had looked at the Pandavas and Draupadi and said, "How are you spending your time here in the forest? How are you spending these years?" And the Pandavas had said, between finding a place to stay and foraging for food and protecting ourselves, what else can we do? Vedvyas had said, "Do you know what the Kauravas are doing in Hastinapur?" Duryodhan has made an iron statue of Bhim. Every day he practices on it, waiting for that war that will come. Karna, already a magnificent archer, is honing his skills too. They're all preparing for war. You must prepare too. Truth and goodness are not enough by themselves to win. You'll need the best of the best weapons. And so Vedvyas had sent Arjuna to the Indrakil mountain to propitiate Shiva himself. Shiva, Paashupati, lord of all the animals, and to get his Paashupaat astra. Arjuna found a spot, made a little hut, cleared the space around him, and made a little shivling, put flowers near it, and then sat down to meditate. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. He spent his time meditating, whether it was rain or snow or heat, days upon days, eating very little, and he trained with his bow and arrow as well, setting harder and harder tasks for himself. Can I hit that pine needle over there? Can I shoot in the dark? One day as he was meditating, a rustling caught his ear. Being a warrior, he was on his feet in an instant, the gandiv in his hand, and he turned, saw that a wild boar was charging toward him, and he shot an arrow. Immediately the boar went down, crashing into the brush. Arjuna ran over to look, but he saw not his one arrow, but his arrow and another arrow. There were 2 arrows in that boar. He looked around, and there was a hunter, like a mountain man. He had a bow in his hand as well. The mountain man came over. He was what's called a Kiraat. And he said, "That's my boar. Move aside." And Arjuna said, "No, as you can see, my arrow killed the boar." "No, as you'll see, your arrow is decoration after my arrow killed the boar. And I intend to take this boar home to feed my family." Arjuna said, "If you want to take that boar home, you have to fight me." And to his surprise, the Kiraat said, "Sure." So he got his bow ready and backed up a few paces, ready to fight. Arjuna thought, he probably doesn't know who I am, because if he knew who I was, he wouldn't be so casual about it. And who knows, he probably knows how to shoot an arrow or 2. I'll make this quick. So Arjuna pulled an arrow or 2 out and let them fly toward Kiraat. And the hunter dodged Arjuna's arrows easily and then let fly a few of his own. Now, nobody dodges Arjuna's arrows, so he was shocked already. And then Kiraat's arrow hit him in the arm, and it hurt. He pulled it out. He's like, "Oh, so he's learned a little bit of archery, I guess, somehow. Okay, I won't play around anymore." And so he began to shoot arrow after arrow after arrow, basically enveloping this hunter in this cloud of arrows. And the hunter waved them aside and then shot arrow after arrow after arrow, so that Arjuna was enveloped in a cloud of arrows. And so Arjuna fixed 3 sharp arrows and aimed them at the hunter, intending to end this once and for all. But before he could even fire, the hunter had shot an arrow and shot the gandiv out of Arjuna's hand. And Arjuna looked at his hand, and the gandiv, which was practically an extension of his own hand, was lying there in the dirt away from him. Nobody did that. With a howl of rage, he pulled out a sword and he rushed toward the hunter. Hunter pulled out a little hunting knife, and then, bored, he began to fence as Arjuna attacked with all his might. Shh, 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 ding, 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 ding. And Arjuna got angrier and angrier, and then the hunter turned and looked at him, and then began to furiously parry with his knife, and thrust, parry, and thrust, and parry, and Arjuna backed up, going towards a cliff, and then he was on the ground and looking over the edge of the cliff, and the Kiraat made one swipe of his knife, and Arjuna's sword was in two pieces. He couldn't believe it. He ran away from the Kiraat. He grabbed his gada. It's not really his weapon, but oh, Bhimbaya, help me out. And he ran toward the hunter again and attacked him with all his might. And the hunter barely dodged the blows. And then finally, when Arjuna put the gada over his head, aiming to bring it down onto the hunter's skull, the hunter grabbed the gada and tossed it over his shoulder into the ravine below. Are you done now? I mean, how much more do you want to get beat up here? The hunter asked. Arjuna was livid. He said, I don't care if you're a demon in disguise. I don't care if you're one of the gods. I don't care if you're the supreme almighty God himself in front of me. I am a warrior and I will never quit. He ran toward the Kiraat and he grabbed him, and the two fell to the ground, wrestling and punching each other and rolling around on the ground. And finally, Kiraat picked Arjuna up as if he weighed nothing and threw him on the ground. And Arjuna fell, stunned, near that shivling that he had made. And he felt for the few flowers that he had strung together, and he placed them on the shivling, whispering to Shiva, I don't know what this is. I don't know how I've lost all my strength, but I, the mighty warrior who had fought Maharati upon Maharati, who was able to fight any demon, anyone, I have no strength in my limbs anymore. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. And he barely opened his eyes, and when he looked, the flowers were gone from the shivling. And he didn't know what had happened, and he looked around and he looked at the hunter, and there, around that Kiraat's neck, were the flowers that he had placed on the shivling. And he knew. And so Arjuna rushed and fell at the Kiraat's feet, and he grabbed them and he said, Forgive me, Mahadev, Shiva, you came yourself to me. You came to me, and instead of praying to you, instead of bowing down to you, I fought you. Can you ever forgive me? I'm not worthy of your weapons. I'm not worthy of anything. I'm a fool, and my pride misled me. And when the Kiraat lifted Arjuna up, and Arjuna looked at him, he was no longer a hunter. But there in front of him, with the Ganga flowing from his head, with the crescent moon adorning his hair, with his jata flowing all around him, with ashes on his head and on his body, with a glowing blue neck where he had swallowed poison, with hissing snakes wrapped all around his neck and his arms, a tiger skin around his waist, a damaru, the drum, and the trishul in his hands. He saw Shiva in front of him, and he bowed his head again and again. Shiva said, Arjuna, if you hadn't come at me, if you hadn't fought me, if you hadn't attacked me with all your strength, you wouldn't have been worthy of the Paashupaat Astra. I had to make sure that you hadn't lost your edge, that you were the warrior that was ready to take on my weapon, and you've earned it. And so he granted Arjuna his Paashupaat Astra and said, use it well in the Dharma Yudh, the Dharma war that is to come. And Arjuna bowed to him, and that place where Shiva appeared, where Arjuna had adorned a Shiva lingam with those flowers. And so that place is known as Mallikaarjuna. And in the Dvadash Jyotirlingam Stotram, the line is Shri Shaile Mallikaarjuna. So this is a story of Mallikaarjuna, how Shiva tested the great warrior taught him a little lesson in humility, but also tested his mettle and then granted him his astra. So have a wonderful Maha Shivaratri, and I'll see you again soon for a story.